Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. I know what you're thinking. What's going on in that Giants-Carolina game? But I can tell you, this is full service. Giants are up 10-0. No need to turn over there. If you ever watch NFL games, frankly, there are way too many commercials. We can agree on that. That's why I TiVo them and fast forward through them. Or you can go to the Red Zone, which is on satellite TV, which is on Sunday afternoon. Red Zone, no commercial. This guy with big ears does it all for you. It's incredible. You got to watch 26 games all at once, or actually it'd be 13 games. So don't worry about it. We will give you the New York Giants scores. You don't have to turn there. And we all remember last Thursday where the Bears tragically lost to the dreaded Green Bay Packers. But don't worry about it. We'll keep you covered. Keep it right here because we've got an incredible show tonight. Because we have Steve Obsitnik. Now, Steve Obsitnik is running for Congress in the 4th Congressional District. So all of you in Cablevision land that are used to listening to John Hartwell's wonderful show, Stream of Conscience, you can listen to that, but then turn it over here because you're going to meet the next congressman from the 4th Congressional District, and you're going to meet him here tonight. Now, this program is live. The phone number here is 438-2003. It also happens to be my cell phone. So after you dial that number, please don't call me in the middle of the night with all your problems like you need a ride to the airport, because I'm not taking the call. But for tonight, you can call in and you can talk directly to the candidate. But before we get to that, I'm going to try and be as quick as I possibly can. The calls are already coming in. Hold on 1 second, caller, if you would. I'm a little concerned about our current president. He's messing up the economy, all these green jobs and shovel-ready jobs that just haven't happened. You go to the gas station, you're going to be paying close to $5 a gallon for gas, and yet somehow he thinks that the Keystone Pipeline is going to hurt the bogs or the ponds out in Nebraska or something like that. We have 34,000 pipelines crisscrossing this country, and he doesn't want to bring in that wonderful fuel from Canada. Last time I checked, Canada didn't have al-Qaeda cells running around trying to kill our ambassadors. The problem is this current president is messing up the current economy. It has 4 years to fix it. It hasn't worked. We've got 8% unemployment, and it's just a disaster. 47 million of your fellow Americans are on food stamps. So I know. Out there, this is Connecticut. It's the bluest of blue states. I know there's a lot of liberal people out there, and you want to help people. I know. You care about people. The rest of us dastardly conservatives don't. I get it. You feel good about yourself because you want to help people, and us bad guys don't. Well, how much is it helping you when the economy's in the toilet like it is right now? You've had 4 years to fix it. It hasn't worked. We got to get the other guy in there. Another thing that's going on that's a problem is our foreign policy. You know, we've had 9 days since we've been attacked in Libya. 9 days it's taken this current administration to come to the conclusion that on the anniversary of 9/11, when we have one of our ambassadors, this isn't some underling, this isn't some army private, this is our ambassador from Libya, is dragged through the streets and killed. If you really want to find out what happened, go on, Google what happened to this poor guy. I won't even say it because there could be women and children watching this program. Our ambassador is slaughtered on 9/11, and the current administration takes 9 days to bring themselves to say that it was a terrorist attack. 9 days. And it's kind of whispered on an airplane by the communication director. This situation has got to be switched around. I'm telling you, it's a problem. And I realize this is Connecticut. And I realize this show is going into a lot of homes that have never voted for a Republican. But for the good of the country, for the good of the economy, so that America is once again respected in the world, consider, if you will, this time. The beautiful thing about the voting booth is it's private. It's not like those kind of liberal union voting where they want it to be a public vote. It's a private vote. And when you go in there, I hope you'd consider making a change this time around. That's just my rant to get the show started. And I really am excited about introducing to you Steve Obsitnik. Thank you for putting up with my rant.
Good to be back, Marty.
And caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Right off the bat, because this is a live program, and we have a caller, and you have a question for the candidate?
Yes, I do. There's actually two parts to the question. The renewal of the Violence Against Women Act was strongly opposed by many House Republicans this year. This is very near and dear to my heart. The reauthorization is now stalled until after the November election. Would he support the reauthorization of the act? And would he support changing the act to cover same-sex couples?
Okay, so violence against women was opposed by Republicans in the Congress. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, and your question for the candidate is, would you likewise oppose it, or would you be in favor of being interested? Go ahead.
Reauthorization is stalled until after the November elections. Would he support the reauthorization of the act, and with that, support changing the act to cover same-sex couples?
Excellent question. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. What about that?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, and I look forward to talking with everyone here with us. It's always a pleasure to be back here,
Absolutely.
Marty.
Well, I'm going to introduce everyone, but go ahead.
Excellent. I think, first of all, I think we're going to see a lot of pieces of legislation which are kicked to the other side of the election. Because right now, unfortunately, we are in an election cycle, and we're not going to be able to have people take courageous leadership on things like that, and budgets, and things to get the economy going. So I'm going to defer until after the election to kind of get deeper into certain amendments, because I think it will change what will be included in that. But I think, just generally when it comes to my opinion on same-sex marriage, I do believe in civil unions. So just so you know where I stand on that position, I do support civil unions between people, but not crossing over to the side of forcing churches to recognize same-sex marriage as it's defined. Okay,
caller, do you have a question for the candidate, Steve Obsitnik? Go right ahead. Yeah, are you calling in for the program?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, Steve, I know you're a business and the Republican platform pretty much.
I'm sorry, please call back when you get a little bit better cell reception, if you would. Let me introduce our panel. We have John Hartwell. John Hartwell, among other things, he's had an incredible life. He was the youth minister, the head of his youth program at his church growing up. He also has spent a lot of time in the Middle East, and he spent a lot of time in Iran. You grew up there, lived there for quite some time. Former state Senate candidate in the 26th District, and now he is a talk show host, and the show is called Stream of Conscience.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we're also joined by Ken Ducey. Ken Ducey, among other things, is a journalist on HamletHub.com. And of course, my dear friend, Dave Straight, and co-host and producer extraordinaire of the Marty Heiser Show, Dave Straight, is here as well.
If they get me any further over here, I'm going to fall off. I'm so far right.
We wanted you way on the right, which is appropriate on a lot of levels, and John Hartwell is more here on the left.
I'm very comfortable here.
All right, caller, do you have a question for our candidate? Go right ahead. If you have a question, go right ahead. Caller, yes, you're on. Go right ahead. Go right ahead. Turn off your TV and ask your question. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay. My question is about Social Security. I wonder if Steve supports efforts to privatize Social Security and to have people invest their own Social Security dollars.
Excellent question.
Good question.
Thank you very much. What about that?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question on that. I think, first of all, we have to recognize that, and I take the position that anyone over the age of 55, that Social Security has to be preserved for everyone in the system. And I think what Social Security is, what we're dealing with right now, is a great example of Washington's dysfunctionality, because I think both sides of the aisle know what the levers are to move, but they're not willing to have the courage to address and make the system solvent, because both sides are using it as a stalking horse for other items in the whole broader scheme of tax reform, Medicare, Medicaid. So I think it's an example of something everyone knows the levers. It can be fixed right now. Making decisions right now on eligibility age, means testing, and everything else can make that program solvent. So the question is, why aren't they making it solvent now? Because it's a political football right now.
I mean, do you think that there's absolute partisan gridlock in Washington right now? I mean, one question about Violence Against Women Act, nothing's being done. Nothing's being done on Social Security. They talk about this financial cliff we're heading at. Is this good? I mean, forget Republican, Democrat. What about Americans? Is this good?
I think most people in this district know, we've heard from the left, we've heard from the right, but I think we generally know kind of what is right. And I think what we're looking for people in Washington is not someone who goes to Washington claiming to be an independent and then has a voting record voting with their party 94.1% of the time. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think anyone in this world is right 94.1% of the time. But I think what we need to do is we just need to reinstill courageous leadership in Washington where people are did what I had to do in the Navy. You put the mission ahead of your personal self-interest. And you have to do what I learned in the Navy, which is you lead by example. Right? And by leading by example, if your example is to be partisan and vote 94.1% of the time, other people won't follow.
Hold on one second.
But if you do go there and reach across the party lines and actually enact good policy and do the second thing I learned at the Naval Academy, which is midshipmen don't lie, cheat, or steal. That's my principle. That's how I work with people to get things done. And by leading by example, I've always had people, if it's in the Navy or business, kind of follow good leadership. And that's what we need more of in Washington.
Excellent. Caller, do you have a question for Steve Obsitnik, congressional candidate for the 4th Congressional District? Go right ahead.
Well, I just wanted to know, one of the ways that the Ryan budget brings down the deficit is by privatizing Medicare and doing it. Does he support the Ryan budget?
Excellent question. What about that?
Well, question, I think the thing with Paul Ryan, he's had so many budgets and put so many ideas out there, you have to fundamentally say, which budget are we talking about? I think what we've seen right now with Obamacare is we've seen the gutting of Medicare, which gives us now a solvent program with 12 years of life left. And I honestly can't look at my parents now, who are 74, 75, and say now that that program that we are now within the Obamacare, by the time my parents are 88, 89, will be insolvent. So I think what we did with Medicare and Obamacare made the program insolvent. I think we know that right now we have people paying in $1 and taking out $3 of benefit. So the economics don't work for long-term people within the system. So I fundamentally believe the same thing is true, that Medicare should stay the way it is for people over 55. And then we can talk about bringing in other choices, be there broadening of Medicare or even other systems which bring in more competition and choice.
Excellent. John, thanks for joining us. Do you have a question for the candidate? And just we want to get your progressive thoughts on this as well. Go right ahead.
I kind of like to go back to the question that the caller had a couple of minutes ago, which was, do you support the voucherization of Medicare? Because that was very clearly in the in the Ryan budget. And the Ryan budget also, according to the Congressional Budget Office, in fact, decreased the time that Medicare is financially sustainable, and that the Obama budgets, in fact, lengthened that time. Now, neither of them have got it on a sustainable basis, so I would agree with you. We need to look at things.
Exactly.
But the question that the caller asked you, and I didn't hear an answer, was, are you in favor of voucherizing or Medicare for people who are under 55?
I think I did answer to say we always have to keep in place a plan for people 55 years and older.
Sure.
Right? I think we know it's insolvent, and we need to look at how do we solve the problem. The big thing about Medicare, which people don't want to talk about, there's $100 billion of fraud in the system. And right now, if you look at a Medicare card, what's on the Medicare card? I don't think anyone here has one. It's your Social Security number and a letter. That's it. So if I get your Social Security number and a letter, I can go commit fraud all day long, and the government has to find it. I'm a technologist. I have a technology background. There's something called a credit card. And a credit card is in every doctor's office today. And a credit card has built into it fraud detection. Why aren't we going down and saying, putting someone in Washington who knows technology to say, we can take out $100 billion of fraud by using credit card technology, which is out there today. Low-cost solution, all of a sudden, that comes out of the system. I think we need to be challenging ourselves other than, is it plan A, plan B, but we just have to do things better. And we need to drive efficiency out of our system.
No one would doubt that we need to reduce the fraud that's in Medicare. No one would doubt that there are technological. Well, we did in Republican administrations. We have it perhaps in Democratic.
Exactly, good point.
But the question still remains: where do you stand on vouchers? And I still haven't heard the answer.
Oh, I said it before. I think we keep the plan in place, and then we have to look
at... For those under 55, where do you stand on vouchers?
We still keep people under 55 should have a path on the plan we have now, and we should allow the market to experiment to say, are there better ways of delivering a more solvent long-term plan?
The Ryan plan offers a choice. He said, then the last thing he came out last week, he said, look,
not the one that they passed in the Congress.
The one that he is proposing is that you have a choice. So you can stay in a bankrupt system if you want, or you can go where you invest it and have vouchers or whatever you want. Why do liberals fear choice unless it's their choice? You know what I mean? Why don't
that's a pretty sweeping statement. Liberals do not fear choice. We want to have a system that works. We want to have a system that's solvent.
So what do you propose for Social Security?
Well, I think we should be looking at extending the retirement age. That's my own feeling. I think we also should be looking at means testing. I think you mentioned that a moment ago.
Why means testing? That's criminal. That's breaking the contract with Americans.
For people under 55, you want to change the contract today. So
I want an option.
So
I don't want it imposed on me.
But part of this here is, I think we have to keep a system in place and we have to look for better alternatives. Medicare Advantage, which was put in place by Senator John Barrow, Democrat.
Right, and has been more expensive than regular Medicare.
Right.
So
agreed.
From my point of view, it's been a failure.
Agreed, which also means that you don't always throw the baby out with the bathwater. We are people of continuous improvement. Just because something doesn't work, you can work it and tweak it. So you look at Medicare Part D. It's a good example of a choice program that has come in, which give people options and give people ranges. So it's been shown to work in other parts. It doesn't mean that it doesn't work everywhere or it works everywhere, but we have to experiment and come up with better solvent solutions. We can't get into a dogma of far left and far right. We need to challenge ourselves with our innovation, with technology, and with looking at what we can do to make these programs solvent for people in the system, but people when eventually we get in the system.
Caller, do you have a question for the candidate or our illustrious panel?
I think your panel is already bickering, so they sound like Congress, so maybe they should put a lid on it and let the candidates speak.
I believe much more in bombast. That's where I come in. It cuts through all the bickering. Go right ahead.
Well, Marty, congratulations to your son being in the service. With that being said, two questions. Sir, you were a former military man, right?
Yes, he is. At Naval Academy. As a matter of fact, there's a very handsome picture of him in a uniform. I don't know if we can get it up close. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm a regular. I want to just ask him two very simple questions. First question is, the Republicans have been criticizing the economy. Connecticut has finished for the last 20 years in a row, 2 decades, the lowest job growth of all 50 states. That's my first question. How would you address that? My second question is a military question. As a former military man, I just heard you say this, do you really think that Obama is responsible for what happened in Libya on his watch? I think that is I think that's a party line, knee-jerk GOP response. I hope you're a bit elevated above that stuff, and you can perhaps answer both questions. Because as a military person, you know things happen in situations. You blame the president. They're blaming him for killing bin Laden. He can't seem to get a break. Thank you very much.
All right, hold on one second, because I think you bring up a good point. Stuff happens.
I'd like to talk to you.
Okay, yeah, hold on one second, because I think you bring up a good point. Stuff happens. It does, and you can't necessarily, when it happens on Barack Obama's watch, it's kind of a cheap shot to say, hey, our embassy was raided in Libya and it's all his fault. It's all his fault, because there's bad people out there and they want to do bad people. My criticism was it took 9 days for the administration to bring themselves to say it was a terrorist attack. They still had it in their head that this was just a spontaneous rally that happened to end in our ambassador being slaughtered. That was only my point.
Okay, I understand, and the same thing happened with the British camp up in Afghanistan when they just blew up 8 planes. These things are happening, as you know, but you don't criticize a sitting president, but that's irrelevant right now. I want to talk to the Marty. Are you his campaign manager, or let me just ask the candidate?
Okay, you're all right. My bad. Okay, so real quick, the 2 questions again were.
Okay. Well, we just discussed the military, so we'll let that one slide. Okay. My 2 questions are this. Number 1, Simpson Bowles. Where do you stand on that? And number 2 is the economy in Connecticut, a local issue. Dead last 20 years in a row.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you.
How would you create jobs?
Excellent. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks for the call.
So we are 17-0 now, and Eli Manning is my quarterback.
No, it's 17-7?
17-0.
Oh, it's 17-0?
And Eli Manning is my fantasy quarterback. So finally he's showing up.
Plus,
So first of all, let me address the military side. I don't think that you can blame the president for what happened in Libya. Knowing, having served in the military for 9 years, graduated from the U.S. Naval Academy, 5 years, nuclear submarines, I think sometimes we give too much credit, and sometimes we give too much blame to people in Washington who are removed from where troops are in the field, putting their lives on the line. So I'd agree with the caller on that from that standpoint. Having served over there in the Mediterranean and the eastern part of the Mediterranean, it's a difficult theater. It's a difficult environment, and I believe that the President is working in good faith to protect our people and our interests over there. Okay, so I just want to kind of put that one to rest. The important one here, because I think this is what this election is really about, is our future prosperity, and how do we derive prosperity, and how do we derive opportunity. Jim Himes wrongly believed that stimulus and big government was our path forward, and we've seen it. And the best example locally is the Merritt Parkway, $70 million, 70 jobs, $1 million a job. In the private sector, I've created high-tech jobs at $70,000 a job. Okay? My grandfather was an entrepreneur moved here from Germany. Didn't know he was an entrepreneur. Came here in 1928. Didn't speak a word of English. He got a job with Merck. He got fired actually after 3 days because Merck figured out he didn't speak English. So he went out and he finally did what all good Germans do. We make precision machine parts. He bought a lathe, he bought a drill press, and he started hiring people. NASA started calling up and started saying, you know what, we're here to make good precision machine parts. And IBM said, we need little springs. Can you do that? Long story short, in 1982, he received the Best Small Business Award in the United States of America, and that was given him by Ronald Reagan in the Rose Garden. So that's the DNA. That's what I've seen growing up in his machine shop, around the floor shop of how entrepreneurs are motivated, right?
But the government built that.
If he heard that,
oh my
he would. As my grandfather used to say, he didn't leave Germany in 1928. He said, I didn't come here for health care and welfare. I came here for opportunity. So how is opportunity derived? My opponent believes it's stimulus and it's big government solutions make people successful. I believe that what entrepreneurs need, like myself, is a level playing field and the ability to see the horizon. So to do that, we need to make sure that the burden of doing business is not so difficult, like it is in the state of Connecticut, that people don't bring jobs here. And you know what? I could have helped bring jobs here, but I didn't because it was too burdensome. Second of all, you look at the tax structure. Right now, people are incentivized to go offshore. The second thing we can deal with. And the third one is we need to make sure that we have skilled workers here who actually can get hired into companies, attract companies, but more importantly, be an entrepreneur themselves. Everyone says that the average age of an entrepreneur. Anyone know what the average age of an entrepreneur is? Anyone?
13, lemonade stand?
Well, I haven't thought of that one. 42 years old.
I couldn't get the permit from the health department.
42 years old. The average entrepreneur is not Mark Zuckerberg. The average entrepreneur is someone who has a job, who has worked hard to learn a trade, and has the incentive to say, you know what, I'm going to leave this job, take away the security, and go out and create a better future for myself and my family. And they do that because there's incentive through compensation structure, that the cost of doing business is reasonable to go do that, and that they can find people to recruit into their business to grow it.
Now, I'm not hearing redistribution anywhere in that plan for Connecticut.
You know, the only redistribution is from the standpoint of you build a better product than me, so customers buy more from you. If I have a bad product, they buy less from me.
Can I ask you a question there?
By all means. HamletHub.com, Ken Ducey.
We obviously talk to a lot of different people, and if you go to the average person on the street today, right, and you tell them, you know, and even Obama said on Letterman on Monday, he said, you know, the deficit, that's really not a short-term problem right now. You know, obviously it's exceeding $16 trillion. If you go to the average person on the street and ask them, you know, is this really affecting your life? Like, what's the problem with this big deficit? No, I'd rather see, you know, more unemployment, or I'd rather see whatever other government programs there are, and sort of leave the deficit alone right now. I mean, what is the problem with the deficit?
Oh, the problem with the deficit? It's our national security. The problem of a growing national debt is our national security. Because when we borrow 40 cents of every dollar on people who aren't necessarily our best friends, and we have a monetary policy which the Fed is driving to hold down interest rates, as soon as we come off of that and our interest rate start to rise, and we have to start paying back money, and it causes that debt to spiral, then we can't fund our military. Then we can't project our power in the world and project our interests in places like the Middle East, and then we fall back, and then we aren't protected at home any longer.
Marty, I'm sorry.
Hold on one second.
Let me jump in on this.
Caller, do you have a question? And then we'll go to John Hartwell. Go right ahead.
Yes, I have a question. I have a personal experience in the 4th Congressional District about an agency that provides home health care. I now have the proof that there was Medicare fraud. Now all the politicians are running. What would Steve do? And would he want to help me? We're talking for a payment of $2,000. They have received over $15,000. How about cleaning up Medicare?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Thank you. I know they had a recent program, maybe it was about a year ago, on 60 Minutes, just talking about Medicaid fraud, and I think they isolated it just to Florida, and it's billions and billions of dollars. What would you do in that?
Absolutely. I mean, caller, I'd love to get your information. You can go to my website, www.obsitnik.com, obsitnik.com, and you can send in an email from that, but I'd love to follow up with you on that. So I think I talked to Medicare fraud before earlier. Okay. So I think that's a big problem which we need to get on.
All right. And John, you had a question about the stimulus?
Well, it's not a question. It's a couple of points here. First of all, Steve, your grandfather was it who came over?
Grandfather.
Yeah, that's a terrific story. But I noticed that he was working for the government. He was making parts for NASA.
Oh, yeah, the customer, sure.
Right. So his customer was the government. So in many cases in this country, jobs are in fact driven by what the federal government does, and they are in fact some of the best jobs that we have in this country. If you talk to Boeing, you talk to Northrop, you talk to Raytheon, you talk to your grandfather, there are lots and lots of jobs, good, stable, long-term jobs that are created by the government, maintained by the government for all of us. And that is one of the reasons why we have a government, is because we do things through the government that we can't do as individuals, because we as individuals are not going to put somebody on the moon. And no company that I know of has actually wanted to do that in this, we did it 40 years ago through the government. No one else has done it. So that's one thing. Second thing I wanted to just mention here. I think all of you guys are into the market, right? You believe in market-based solutions.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we were talking about the debt a moment ago, the $16 trillion debt, and it's growing. We're running over $1 trillion in deficit every year.
17 trillion since Obama. I'm sorry, up 7 trillion since Obama took office.
I think it's 5, but that doesn't matter. The point here is this: if you look at a market,
apparently it doesn't matter. Apparently it doesn't. According to Obama letterman, it doesn't matter.
Here's
Don't
the
worry,
point.
be happy.
Here's the point. When you want to calm down and listen, maybe you'll learn something here.
Okay.
All right?
Go right ahead.
A market-based solution.
Yes.
Yes. Worldwide interest rates are very low. The United States government can borrow as much money as it wants. Why? Because you think we're headed for a cliff, but in fact the rest of the world are putting their money here because they trust us. They trust this government. This government, we may not any longer have a AAA rating according to Moody, but we have a quadruple A rating according to the people in the world who are willing to put their money here to be safe. And that's why our interest rates are very low.
It's because the Fed is printing. Get real, John. Come on.
If the people didn't believe that money was good, they wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't buy our debt. We have bought so much of our debt, we could borrow.
I want to get back to the military, okay?
No, stay with the market for a moment. Think about the market.
They would in one case, if it was still the safest one out there. In other words, if you're the best of the worst.
We are the best.
Of the worst.
We are the best.
Of the worst, though. And
compared to Greece, we're looking pretty good.
The money is flowing in here.
That's what it is. It's that everybody else is so
if everybody believed that, then gold would be $4,000 an ounce.
What has gold done in the last 6 years, John?
Gold has gone up
300%.
From nowhere. It went up. It went up. It was very low. It was
at $500 an ounce.
You have to admit,
that sounds low today. When it was $200 an ounce, $500 an ounce sounded pretty high. Let me switch. Why don't we get back to the
caller, do you have a question for the candidate?
There's been so much money coming
into this country.
Yes, I do. I wanted to correct the candidate on one point. He said that Medicare D was a choice for the people that had to take it out. Honestly, it was a carrot and a stick. You have to not only pay $35 a month to have Medicare D, but then if you don't have a plan that they approve, I had a perfectly good one before, I had to switch to one they approve or pay a penalty. I don't think that's a choice for the seniors. It's actually a burden.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Thank you. Yeah, please respond. Medicare D.
Yeah, Medicare D. I didn't say that you can pick any plan, but the government qualifies certain plans, and from within that, you get choice, and they're allowed to compete for the various bundles they're offering. So I want to make sure. So thank you for the clarification on that. But
Steve, let me get you a response, because John Hartwell is talking about, he's basically talking about a free money approach. Yeah. Let's keep the printing presses going. It's fine because we're considered a safe haven. The dollar is staying, and there's really no problem here. And I think that's basically the progressive point of view. As you pointed out, Barack Obama, who was on David Letterman, said the same thing. Don't worry about the deficit. Now, let me just get Steve's response to that. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Hold on.
Vice President Cheney said the same thing, remember.
Okay.
He said deficits don't matter. That's from the Vice President.
So if he's quoting a conservative Republican, he might be right.
Thank you.
Go right. Please respond, though. Go ahead.
Do you know where I'd say I don't think we give our kids enough credit?
Call it.
And when I went into my daughter's class back in March, and it was the source of one of our commercial ads, and kids asked me, well, what's the problem in Washington? I used the 4-letter word. I said, debt. And all their heads turned. And I said, that's when I said, hold on a second. I had my daughter come up. I said, make believe you have $2 and I have $1. If I give you $1, will you give me your $2? All 20 kids in the room go, why would she do that? If an 8-year-old knows that that general pattern is not right, that isn't right for people who are 45 and 50-year-old. And that's where it started, okay? So kids know really what we should know, and we get away with it. And there is some truth. We are a reserve currency right now in this moment, and people feel more safe here or in Germany, okay? But they're also loading debt on us because they want our consumers to buy their goods, and they want to saddle us with debt, which when interest rates rise from artificial lows, and when it goes from $100 billion upward to $600 to $700 billion, it will outstrip what we pay on Medicare. And at that point,
wait, that debt is not at a variable interest rate. In fact, if the interest rate goes up, they lose.
John, the Federal Reserve is buying 90% of the debt that's being issued. It's not because of the foreigners pouring money in here. Foreign money coming into this country is relatively small compared to what the Federal Reserve is buying.
So then we can't be in trouble with foreigners who are loading us up with debt. You've got to have one story here, guys. You can't go both ways. I'm sorry.
So you're saying that the Chinese aren't? Are you saying the Chinese aren't buying our debt?
Interest rates are so low because foreigners are buying all the money.
I said people around the world.
It's the Federal Reserve is buying 90% of the debt.
Baloney.
That's why these interest rates are so low. 90%. That's why these interest rates are artificially low.
It's true.
Baloney.
The Federal Reserve, I'm telling you, do you ever watch 60 Minutes?
Listen.
They had a whole thing on Ben Bernanke.
Pay attention and you might learn something here.
I'm telling you, 90% of this debt is being purchased by us. Ben Bernanke is hitting something on his computer and creating more dollars. He's just turning on the printing press. Eventually, it's going to be inflation.
This is very educational, John.
And what we've done is we've shifted the average.
Eventually, we'll all die.
Eventually, we'll all die.
On that note, go right ahead.
And let the 8-year-olds in class deal with it, right?
The problem is, like, you have to articulate what the problem is. If you ask the average person, they don't understand. Supposing it goes to 25 trillion, who cares? But the problem is, like, you have to articulate, like, look, this is debt that's not going to go away. Your daughter's already in $140,000 in debt.
Because
what they do understand is $5 for a gallon of gas.
Right,
that much they
Point,
understand.
right? But that's what I'm saying. The message is not articulated.
Well, but also, you know what it is here with the interest rates we have low here now? It is the largest travesty to our seniors. Our seniors who are living fixed income, and they have their money in a checking account making 1-2%, right? Now, they are being deflated out of their future. It's a travesty.
So you want inflation?
Caller, can you bring some rationality to this discussion?
How much do you want?
Go right ahead.
What kind of
I'm right here.
Steve wants inflation. I'd like to know
I'm kind of intrigued. It's just like money.
I'm sorry. Can you give us your question one more time, please? Go right ahead.
I didn't get to ask the question.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We're talking about money, and I know Mr. Sitnick had at one stated, and maybe more than once, that he thinks that Bush-era tax cuts should be extended for at least another year. And this is like a political football that keeps bouncing around. You know, you want it extended, the revenues are going to be lost. It's a lot of money that's going to be lost. How are those revenues going to be made up? And then factor in the deficit reduction. How is this, we're going to wave the magic wand? How is this going to happen? Be specific about it.
Okay, excellent question. Thank you. Thank you. What about that? Bush tax cuts?
Let me just comment here.
Okay.
Any system here, you can't have deflation. Deflation is a bad thing.
We haven't had it.
Your question was the right amount of inflation.
Yeah.
Any properly functioning free market system has a certain amount of nominal inflation and needs to in the 1 to 2, max 3% range. So that's the answer to your question.
So as long as we're there, we're okay.
That's what the Federal Reserve does. They manage,
And,
they manage
but
employment
from your
and
point
inflation.
of view, as long as our inflation rate is in the 1 to 2 to 3% range, we're okay. Because that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be for a while.
I don't think we are. If you look at corn prices recently,
If you look at
gas prices,
if you looked at my
gas
healthcare
prices.
bill,
Look at this. The consumer price index is not at anything
John,
above 3%.
now you're a smart guy. You know that number is manipulated because when house prices are falling, then they put house prices in. But when house prices are rising, they put rent prices in. It's called hedonic adjustments. Look it up. It's really educational. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, they do take out certain things like food and energy. And one of the things when I go around the district that people care about is food and energy, right? So you can't normalize out. And we all know statistics, and you make statistics look however you want. But that's the key thing there.
Previous cause, Bush tax cuts. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so what I said very clearly.
The idea here is, I think, from the progressive side of things, is we got to keep taxing the people to keep that money coming into the government. Funny thing happens, though, when you tax people too much, revenues to the government actually go down.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan cut the maximum tax rate from somewhere up in the 90s to 24%. Guess what happened? The revenue to the government doubled in the 1980s. Progressives like that, they'll have that look. You see, if you can get a close-up of his face, he hates it when you bring that up. They'll go, oh, shucks, no,
How many times did Ronald Reagan raise taxes? How many times did he raise taxes?
No, the fact of the matter is Ronald Reagan cut the maximum tax rate from the upper 90s.
No, it wasn't
70%.
in the 90s.
Oh, what was the number?
It was around 70%.
70%. So you think 70% is good? You think I should go out and bust my hump painting houses and give 70% to the government so they can go invest in Solyndra?
Did I say that?
Well, you say you're defending high taxation.
What I said was that Ronald Reagan also raised taxes. He lowered them, and then he saw he made a mistake, and he raised them and raised them and raised them again.
Tell you what, you liberals want to take on Ronald Reagan? Go right ahead. I'm going to go with the 70 to the 24. Okay, you tell me if that's a tax increase. It's not. And what happened, and you hate to admit it, is that sorry if I spit a little. What happens is that you hate to admit it, revenue to the Treasury, which is what you guys want. You want more money, 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 so you can give it to people that vote for you. I get it. I know how this works. Revenue to the Treasury doubled in the 1980s. It doubled.
After
so
the
all this talk
1986
of
Tax Act.
increase taxes, because if we don't increase taxes, how are we going to get this money? You keep taxing, all of a sudden revenues to the government go down. Am I wrong?
Take a breath here. Calm down.
I'm fairly calm. I like to think it is passionate.
In 1986, they raised taxes again, and that's when the money started to come back in.
70 to 24. That's a tax.
It never went to 24. It's never been at 24. I don't know what planet you think you're living on.
And you also don't think that we're buying 90% of our own debt.
I do.
You think somehow the Chinese are buying all this.
No, I do not. I never said that.
The Chinese were buying it until we got downgraded, and then they quit buying it.
All right, caller.
Foreigners own $6 trillion of our debt. That's
caller, do you have a question? Go right ahead.
That's right. I agree with that.
Yes, I do.
So
I would like to hear from the candidate. Does he, in fact, believe that the Federal Reserve is buying 90% of our debt currently?
Excellent question. Let's go to the source.
I believe it's lower than 90%. I think it's somewhere in the 60 to 65% range. But we can check that.
But
it's not.
It's not 90%. It's 60 to 65%.
I mean, he said he's not sure.
You know what? It's still a lot.
Exactly.
It's still a lot.
No matter what it's the number.
And the biggest manipulation going on right now is taking an average longer-term interest rate and shifting it to shorter and turning our paper over shorter, which means that the wall is even closer because we need to refinance that in 1, 2, 3 years at rates which we don't know what they're going to be. Right now they're zero, but instead of locking that in for 10 years like on a 30-year mortgage, which a lot of us like to do, right now the government is on an arm. The government is on an adjustable rate mortgage program, and we know what that did in the mortgage crisis, and that's how our government's being financed.
In 4 years, the Fed balance sheet will be $6 trillion.
I mean, do you agree? Do you agree with that?
If the debt is truly really short term, obviously that's a higher risk.
It is.
There's no doubt about it.
And that's what the federal government is doing, or the Fed is doing right now. That's the process. So we have an arm. We're financing the government with an arm. A 3-year arm.
Real quick, on a much more important issue, the update of the Giants game. Can we get that one more time? Are we like breaking some violation? Like, is the NFL going to sue us or something for giving these scores out? We could be. Are you an attorney, by the way?
No.
Many of your friends are. I need representation.
20 to nothing.
Oh, my
20
God.
to nothing, and I just want to have a shout out to my friend April, who said Carolina was going to win. Oh, Cam Newton. Well, how's Cam Newton now?
49-yard field goal.
All right, caller, are you there? Are you watching the football game, or do you have a question for this erudite panel?
I have a quick comment and then a question. The quick comment is that you are absolutely incorrect. The Federal Reserve is not buying 65 to 67% of the debt. The Federal Reserve in late 2008, early 2009 made a one-time intervention to buy debt when the debt markets were practically dead. The debt today is the vast majority is being purchased by American citizens buying bonds and by foreign investors.
That's not true.
And so my comment is, if the candidate doesn't even understand that, how is he going to represent us in Washington and deal with financial and fiscal issues if he doesn't even understand what the situation is?
Well, your caller's wrong.
The second,
Caller, you're being accused of basically factually. Does anybody have Google that can check this out? Because that's what we need to know. But what's your second comment?
My question is, it's been widely circulated that the candidate does not expect to vote, or at least doesn't vote very regularly. Why is he running for office if he doesn't even vote?
You bring up a very good point. Thank you. You know, on that note, there's another candidate. I don't know if you can get a close up. This guy's name is Chris Murphy. You might have remembered Chris Murphy. I guess maybe he does vote, but apparently he doesn't pay for his rent or his mortgage, and he was actually foreclosed on. And yet the bank that he used after he was foreclosed on gave him a sweetheart mortgage, much like you might remember Senator Dodd had something very similar. This is a man who wants to represent us in Connecticut. And oh, by the way, he was on the banking committee in the U.S. Congress that had a wonderful deal for that same bank where the bank benefited $400 million. So we're going to ask the candidate about his voting record.
Marty, don't
don't
let character get in the way.
Yeah, let's not bring up character.
Yeah.
I know you're the guest, but one more caller. Caller, quickly, do you have a question?
Yeah, how about answering the question for the candidate, not you answering for him?
Good point. Very good point. You know, my wife tells me the same thing. I talk too much. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yeah.
What's your response to that?
So let's first of all look at the facts here. I didn't vote in Connecticut in 2005, 6, and 7. Okay? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 I did. So voting is not there's no law that's broken, right? It's a duty or an obligation, however you want to think of it, as a citizen. But you know what? I spent 9 years wearing the uniform of this country. And if anyone wants to talk about my patriotism, they can talk to me about that. And in 2005, 6, and 7, when I was starting Quintel, and I get a call on a Saturday, and I have to go somewhere around the world because my customers need me, and because I didn't think about an absentee ballot, I know I'm not the only one in this district that dealt with that. So please, don't come after me about patriotism. If you've served in the military, I'll talk to you. But if not, don't come after me to try to put something forward which really is a non-issue.
Caller, you have a question for the candidate?
Yes, I do. I can call a question for Steve. I assume that he is rooting for Romney to win, right?
Are you rooting for Romney to win?
Yes, I am.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. All right. Now, with Romney's foreign experience, how long does he think it will be before we'll have an altercation overseas to start building up our jobs?
The question was an altercation overseas.
I think the question is he's concerned about the potential presidency of Romney and his foreign policy. Is that the question, caller?
Yes, it is. He doesn't have any foreign policy experience. And as far as I'm concerned, I think he's going to start something overseas, someplace, an altercation, and that's his way of making jobs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
How's Steve feel?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Thank you for the
very good question. I don't see the linkage to jobs unless he thinks we're going to drive a war to build jobs and so forth. But what I would say is before Barack Obama, before Barack Obama came into office, he didn't have any foreign policy experience.
And it shows.
And it shows. Your words. So I think Mitt Romney has a lot of foreign policy experience. Okay, he has done quite a bit in business, dealing with governments over many, many years. Okay, and the same things that are required there really are important in managing with states' heads. Number one, I think. Second of all, yeah, I'm very comfortable seeing what he's done in things like the Olympics and Salt Lake Games and so forth, and how he's managed dignitaries. So I think a lot of people, no one is ever really prepared to take on the role of commander-in-chief. I don't care who you are, if you're Eisenhower or whoever. That is a unique job.
But what if you're a community organizer first? Doesn't that help?
What do you do to fix it, though? Like, what do you, like, you know, I don't care. We could talk all day about, like, whose fault it is that our ambassador was killed, but let's face it, that's a big problem. Like, what do you do?
Specifically,
the whole Middle East is a hotbed right now, right? I mean, let's face it, they all hate us. I mean, frankly, right? And what do you do about that? Do you sort of live with the fact that they hate us and you just try to protect us against them? Do you try to educate them? Do you try to, you know, do nation? What is it?
I think, first of all, we have to protect our interests and protect our people, okay? And when we are viewed as being weak, more people will come after us. And I think that's what we've seen a lot over the last few weeks. So we have to maintain a military that is a forward presence that protects our interests in a focused way, okay? And we cannot find ourselves negotiating with terrorists, in effect. So I think those are some important principles which we need to keep, you know, in front of us. And I've dealt with that in dealing with the military in terms of when people perceive us as weak, people will come after us. When we're strong, people tend to stay away from us. And I think it's just how self-confident are we as a people? And I think that's really what this whole election really is about, is where's our self-confidence? I mean, I've taught entrepreneurship at Sacred Heart, and I have kids graduating saying, where's my opportunity from? I'm like, you have a MBA in entrepreneurship, right? My grandfather came here with a 6th grade education from Germany. And where's our self-confidence to go out and create jobs, or self-confidence to protect ourselves and our interests? So when it comes down to the Middle East, and this is very important to me personally, okay? I'm Catholic, my wife is Jewish. And even regardless of that, I think any country in a region which has been a democracy and embraces a lot of our principles, and in 6 decades, people have tried to wipe that nation off the face of this earth. And what have they asked from America? All they've asked are arms and money. And a lot of the money has been paid back. So I side with that country in that district of the world. And we need to make sure that the security interests of Israel is maintained. And we can't allow what's going on there now, particularly if Iran does evolve into a pure nuclear threat.
Okay, real quick, the big mystery: how much of our debt is purchased by the source is the Wall Street Journal, which is a pretty good source. It says Fed buying 61% of U.S. debt. The Federal Reserve is propping up the entire U.S. economy by buying 61% of the government-issued debt by the Treasury Department, a trend that cannot last. Lawrence Goodman, a former Treasury official and current president of the Center for Financial Stability. So that's the number. It's not 90. It's not nothing.
So you were perfect. You said between 60 and 65. Just
so
for the record.
Apparently, I was too far to the right, and my illustrious guest may have been wrong as well, but the candidate had it just right.
So I am qualified to go to Washington and solve these things.
Apparently. See, what
Thank you, caller.
This is what happens. Just so you know, Marty Heiser Show, it's a live program. Guess what? None of us get paid to do this. Guess what? We throw our phone number out there, and they can have anyone that wants to call in. Guess what? I'm sure that there are elements on this program tonight that made sure that people called in with all their questions and stuff like that. But frankly, you're in the arena, and if you can't take politics is a contact sport.
This is about representation, and this is about representing everyone. And I really encourage this debate and conversation. But in the end, I think what I want people to understand about me is my instincts are pretty good. I'm a hard worker. And I learned in the Naval Academy one thing: midshipmen don't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. And that's the principles we need in Washington.
And there's an element of humility that comes through with you, because in order to qualify to be on a submarine, that's a really strict profile and protocol that they thought. Not everybody gets to be on a submarine. And the people that end up being on the submarine show high degrees of stability and intelligence. Sounds like you're overqualified to go to Washington.
All right. Let's break up this love fest. This isn't, some kind of echo chamber. We're hard-bitten journalists, so we got to give in. And speaking of which, our next caller, do you have a question for the candidate?
Yes, I do. Too bad I can't make it into the show today. I miss this type of entertainment on Thursdays. Quick question for the candidate. I want to go back to an earlier question that was asked you at the beginning of the show that I don't think you actually answered. Actually, two questions. Number one, do you support the vouchers for Social Security? And number two, more importantly, everybody keeps talking about the economy, and I didn't hear you answer the question in regard to the Simpson-Bowles proposal. So where do you stand on Simpson-Bowles? So number one, Social Security vouchers. Number two, Simpson-Bowles. Where do you stand on those two topics? Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you. Simpson-Bowles and the vouchers.
So let's talk about Simpson-Bowles here. Okay.
No obfuscating. You got to sit here and answer the questions.
Oh, perfect. That's why I'm here.
All right.
Simpson-Bowles. First of all, let's be clear. Jim Himes did not vote for Simpson-Bowles. He voted for Cooper-La-Tourette, which his own budget vice chairman said is a shell game. Okay? Simpson-Bowles does provide a good framework of things that people can converge on. It was put together by a Republican and a Democrat, and then President Obama chose not to go down the path of instituting it. As a note goes back and forth here.
And Paul Ryan voted against it.
So the key thing is, the key thing to recognize in all of these plans, and this is what no one's going to tell you, Simpson-Bowles, Gang of Six, Rivlin, Domenici, you know what? We need to create jobs to make those plans solvent. 2.5 million jobs a year, says the CBO. 2.5 million jobs a year. Before those are even solvent. So we have a problem right now. We're doing 70 to 90,000 jobs a year. We're doing about 1 million, okay? So we have got to get our jobs engine going. And the way it's gone so far is through stimulus and big government, where we should be empowering entrepreneurs like my grandfather, myself, and kids coming out of Sacred Heart today, because that's our path forward in terms of how do we grow our economy forward. Second thing on Medicare?
Yeah, vouchers. Vouchers. Here's let me
I will be clear for a third time.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Okay, for the third time, at least from my standpoint, is number one, people over 55, we don't change the plan. A commitment's been made, and we cannot gut that system like we did with Obamacare to address other, broaden the base of people we're pulling in the system. I think we have to find other better systems to do that, number one, okay? Second of all, I think we need to play with and be creative with alternatives like Medicare Part D to bring in other innovation to solve this problem. So, you know, I don't want to put a label on what it is, but what Medicare Part D was...
Wait, Steve, excuse me. You've said this several times, but you really haven't addressed the question, and you really need to do that. Paul Ryan's plan was to say we are going to give seniors a fixed amount of money, and you can go out and get as much health care with that as you can. And
that's not his current proposal.
That is what was passed.
That is not his current proposal.
That was passed twice by the House, and he didn't change his mind until he became on the ticket with Romney.
What's his current proposal?
What does he really believe? The thing about Paul Ryan is that has really disappointed a lot of people in this country in the last few weeks is there was a guy that seemingly had a set of beliefs, and now he seems to be fudging them.
He disappointed you. He hasn't disappointed me.
I'm delighted with him.
Well, I'm glad you are. Yeah. He's a wonderful guy.
I think so.
The question, though, is, do you support a plan that would give seniors a fixed amount of money, not today, not the ones that are above 55?
That's an option for that.
Would you support that as a way to solve the Medicare problem?
As I said again, above 55,
we know that.
Change, right?
Below 55. 40-year-olds. Do you want to tell a 40-year-old you're going to have a voucher?
You need to take a breath. I know, you're getting it wrong. You want to scare as many elderly people as you can.
No,
I get it.
I'm not. No, we're not trying to scare. No,
we're on to it.
Take the 55s off the table.
Scary vouchers, vote Democrat. We get it. We know we know. Scaring old
answer
people
the question.
Is your big
That's all
thing.
we want. It's an answer to the question.
He's going to answer the question.
Because we're against it. We're against it. Are you for it? That's the question.
Let's scare the old people.
I'll answer it the same way I did. We have to keep that plan in place, and we need to look for alternatives to make it solvent. Right? I'm not going to jump on a word here to excite you or calm you, but I think we need to use more innovation, use market-driven principles in a way, like we did with Medicare Part D, in a controlled fashion, to give people choice and access to better health care than we have today.
See, John, you love choice when it comes to terminating pregnancies, but you hate choice when I get to invest my own money. Why is that so offensive?
Okay, we're going to go to the lightning round, and these are going to be questions towards the candidate. We're going to start with the caller. Lightning round, quick question, quick answer. Go ahead, caller, real quick. Caller, are you there? Go right, real quick. Quick question, quick answer.
Quick answer. The 61% was from 2009. The Fed is not buying debt now, has not been buying at that level for the last few years.
Okay, thank you for that correction.
It's much higher.
It's actually, the Wall Street Journal article was from 2012. I don't know. Take it up with the Wall Street Journal. They've been doing this stuff for a while. Quick question, lightning round. Quick question, quick answer.
Well, okay, so these Middle East wars are the silent wars because nobody's paying attention to them. 17 guys a day are coming back and killing themselves. We've got guys, vets begging in the streets. Then we've got a president, if you can zoom in on this, is out marketing his idea of the American flag, which I find to be terribly offensive. I mean, can you imagine American troops coming home in coffins draped in his flag? I find that offensive. What are we going to do for these vets? They can't get jobs. Their arms and legs are blown off. They're committing suicide. They're being neglected. What can we do for them?
Absolutely. You know, being a veteran, and I'm a member of Port 5 in Bridgeport, and I spend a lot of time with veterans. I think that part of the how do we reintroduce people into the workforce? People come back from the military with great skills and great trade skills. We need to have a better introductory program motivating corporations. I mean, a good example is like JP Morgan Chase, right? And the management there has taken it on to say, we are hiring a lot of veterans and cross-train what they've done to bring them into our industry. And I think we have to look at ways to allow the private sector to draw that in, right? And also recognize that these 47 job training programs we have out there right now, that we don't need 47. We need fewer, and we can target things better for veterans. I know we're being
KenHamletHub.com. Quick question, quick answer.
Softball question. Great-great-great-grandchildren of yours, what are they going to learn about your legacy?
I cared.
John Hartwell, the talk show host of Stream of Conscience, also former Senate state candidate. Quick question, quick answer.
Will you come on my show?
Sure, why not?
Thank you.
Listen, I want to give you the last minute. There's a vast viewing audience out there. Just tell them why you're running and why you want their vote. You got the last minute.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be on with you guys. I didn't expect this to be the format. But I think that fundamentally here, what this election is our future. I think people in this district deserve better, and we can do better. And we get better by getting out of this self-confidence rut we have right now. I did not grow up in a state that was 50th in everything now. 50th in retirement, 50th in business friendliness, 50th in gas prices, 50th in indebtedness. And we have to rekindle our spirit, which made this state so great, and the state that I grew up in. So I care, I have the background, I have the tenacity, and I will fight for Connecticut.
Thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. You were in the arena, much like Teddy Roosevelt in that famous poem. Join us next week on the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get my warped perception of the truth, as well as some friends of mine. And the Giants are going to win. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.